If you wanted to watch a YouTube video, where do you think you'd find it easier to be able to download one and watch one? Would it be easiest if you had to stream it at home, or if, let's say, you're going out into a forest for a hike with some of your friends and you just wanted to take a break, sit under a tree, and then download a YouTube video and watch? Between these two, where do you think it would be easiest?
Home will be easy because it has routers.
Yes, I too reckon that connectivity deep inside a forest is likely to be a little weak. But you know what? A lot of this is likely to change because a landmark event has now happened which will bring internet connectivity to parts far away in the world, even if you're sailing in a ship. What do you think I'm talking about?
This is going to happen because a company called OneWeb is going to launch satellite-based internet connection. We will have a better internet connection that we can use anywhere.
ISRO has recently launched 36 satellites for OneWeb, whose goal is to mainly provide high-speed internet coverage across the globe.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
The exciting thing about this launch is that it marks the completion of full constellation of satellites for OneWeb.
I am really excited to talk about this topic. It's going to be a quick and snappy discussion about how these satellites are going to help us watch YouTube videos and Netflix and maybe even play live online video games, and some people might even use it for some useful stuff like accessing the internet for work from any corner of the world. It could be when you're sailing in the sea, you're flying in an airplane, or if you're deep inside a forest where no internet has so far penetrated. But for those of our listeners who are listening to this podcast channel for the first time, should we perhaps introduce ourselves?
Yeah,
Hi there, you're listening to What's New Today. This is a kids and family podcast channel about current events that shape our world. This is your host Sangeeta from India. In every episode, I'm joined by a lot of curious children and sometimes even curious adults who would love to share their ideas about how these current events are going to change their own lives. And joining me today is...
my name is Syed Ayan. I study in class 4. I live in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur.
Wonderful. So, Saeed, what are your favorite hobbies? I'm assuming reading about satellites is not the most interesting hobby you have, is it?
No, my favorite hobby is to watch old movies
Old movies, in which language?
in Hindi.
Wow. Do a lot of people around you watch old Hindi movies? Your parents, grandparents? Is that how you got interested?
Yeah, my father and my grandmother watch.
So, what's your favorite old Hindi movie?
Mera Naam Joker.
Mera Naam Joker. How many times have you seen it?
Just one time because it is very long.
But still, it ranks as your most favorite movie.
Yeah.
What really stands out in that movie that makes it so interesting for you?
That it has my favorite hero, Raj Kapoor,
And why do you like Raj Kapoor?
because he has a mustache.
Okay, interesting reasons. So, on that note, Syed, do you want to quickly tell our listeners what is the interesting event that has happened today and explain it in very simple words for even a very young child, like a 6-year-old child?
For me, the most interesting thing is that I get to speak in this podcast channel.
Wow, that is really sweet of you, Syed. Apart from this landmark event in Syed's life, what's the other important event that has happened, amongst the OneWeb satellites?
That it is sending satellites to get better internet connection.
So, how is getting internet from a satellite different from the way we all get internet today?
We all connect using a telecom tower. Only if a telecom tower is near our home can we access the internet. But there are a lot of places in the world where there are no telecom towers, like in a desert or a mountain.
What is the name of the company that owns all of these satellites and that is going to bring us this internet connection?
It's OneWeb. So most recently, OneWeb sent 36 satellites up into space. Now with this, they have a total of 618 satellites.
So all this talk about satellite-based internet sounds pretty fascinating, right? So I also spoke to a curious adult who happens to know a little bit more about this in greater detail. But he promised that he would explain how this works the way a 6-year-old can understand.
Hello everyone, I'm Aditya and I'm an analog design engineer at Texas Instruments. At TI, I build circuits for communication systems such as 4G and 5G wireless networks.
Welcome, Aditya. Thank you so much. And some of my questions will also sound like questions from a 6-year-old. I hope that's okay with you. So how do these satellites work to help us get data connectivity?
So satellites operate on the basic principle of line of sight. So as long as a satellite has a direct line of sight to the device which is trying to communicate with the satellite for internet, it can provide the data. All you need is enough number of satellites covering different regions of Earth. So it can mean rural areas with no infrastructure accessibility, right, to cable access or even network towers. So all you need is a simple antenna, or it could also mean ships sailing on high seas without any access to nearby land. So they need not rely on the network towers on land, they can just pick data from satellites.
How far into space are these satellites floating? The moon is about 400,000 kilometers away. Are these satellites that close to the moon or closer to Earth?
These satellites now are placed at around distances of around 350 kilometers from Earth.
Oh, that's almost like just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Earth.
But one disadvantage being, because it's a short distance from Earth, the field of view the satellite has is very small. It can't cover wide region of Earth. So the way you compensate this is by placing large number of satellites around Earth. So that's what OneWeb has also done. They have placed 618 satellites around Earth to ensure that internet coverage is accessible across the different areas of Earth.
Wow.
All of this sounds really fascinating, but I'd also like to add a tiny little backstory to this. So OneWeb started launching its satellites. So it had to get 618 satellites up into space. So it started launching them in small batches in 2019. And almost all of their satellites were then launched on Russian space vehicles called the Soyuz. But after the Russia-Ukraine war started, there was a tiny twist in the story. Now, OneWeb is a company that is based out of Britain. And Britain and Russia were pretty angry at each other after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And one thing led to another, and finally, OneWeb satellites could no longer be launched on any of the Russian launch vehicles. At that point, when OneWeb was really worried what would happen, how would we get our remaining satellites up into space, two companies helped them. One was SpaceX, the company that's owned by Elon Musk, and the other was the Indian Space Agency, ISRO. When OneWeb was scrambling somehow to get the remaining satellites up into space, both ISRO and SpaceX were a big help to get to this 618 satellites up in space for all of us on Earth to get connectivity. Syed, all this talk about satellites in space reminds me of a joke. Can I ask you one?
Yes,
What do you call money which is floating in space? Let me give you a clue. The word can be divided into two parts, and the first part is something that's twinkling in the sky.
star money.
Star money is close. The answer is Starbucks. So, Syed, if you were on a vacation deep inside a forest, let's say your parents take you to see a lot of interesting animals inside the forest, would you really want internet connection?
I don't want internet connection in forest. I don't want to see devices in forest.
Then what would you like to see?
Animals, trees and plants.
Wow, what a welcome answer. You don't even want to watch a movie on Netflix in case you get bored?
No, I don't want to watch.
On that very interesting note of Saeed vacationing deep inside a national park, shall we move to the next interesting part of this episode?
Quiz time.
Question 1. Tell me if what I'm about to say is true or false. Very, very soon, you can watch a Tom and Jerry video even when you're sitting inside an airplane and you can connect to the internet. True or false?
True, I think. Because I think in future we can internet connection will get better.
Question number 2. Which space agency recently launched 36 satellites for the company OneWeb?
Indian Space Research Organization or ISRO.
Wonderful. The last and the final question. Is this true or false? Setting up a telecom tower deep inside a desert is very easy.
False. Because inside a desert we cannot build mobile towers. Very easy.
On that note, thank you so much, Syed. I had a lot of fun chatting with you. But before we wrap up today's podcast, Syed, I know you've been an avid listener of this podcast channel. If you would like to recommend one of your favorite episodes to our listeners, which episode would that be?
100th episode. Because I enjoy listening about how a broadcast is created.
Any episode apart from the 100th episode that you liked?
Yeah, 100 years of Disney. I love listening about how animated cartoons are made.
Thank you, Syed, so much for sharing your favorite episodes. So if any of our listeners would like to find out more about how Walt Disney used to create Mickey Mouse in his early years and today how a Frozen or an Encanto is made, you can listen to some really interesting conversations with animators from Disney Studios as well as illustrators and cartoonists. Scroll down and you can find links to these episodes in our show notes below. And a big thanks to Aditya for being such a sport to explain to us things that are complex but in such simple terms. And before we wrap up, 2 small points of note for all of our listeners. One, coming this summer, we have a summer camp for a lot of young kids who'd love to come and learn how podcasts are made and how they too can speak on forums like these. If you're interested, do follow us on our Instagram page or you can write to us at hello@wsnt.in. There's also a WhatsApp number in the show notes below. Reach out to us to find out more about this. And don't forget to click follow, subscribe, like and share widely on social media to help us grow our listener base. And
Thanks for listening.